All right,
I'm recording. Recording in
there we
progress.
go.
Yes.
Okay, so everyone, we're restarting again. For those of you who are just joined us, welcome. It's good to see you. So we're going to go over recruiting tonight. We are joined by Coach Mark Crisco, who's the head coach of William Peace University, who also was one of my college coaches when I was in college. And he's going to be talking about the college side of recruiting for us. And we also have Coach Manning, who's our 2024 coach, which we think is important to have him on since he's going to be coaching the people who are the rising juniors this year. Or rising seniors this year. So real quickly, Coach Crisco, do you want to introduce yourself to the group?
Yeah, like Chandler had mentioned, I previously coached him at Guilford College, which was another Division III over there in Greensboro. Currently with William Peace University here in downtown Raleigh. It's interesting. Each university has its own little niche of student athlete that they're looking for, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later on. But again, been doing this recruiting for over 10 years, a decade worth of experience, really consider myself an expert on the recruiting side. So open to any and all questions, because I see that often when I'm on the road recruiting. People come to me and asking me, so how does this work? So if you have any questions, don't feel obligated to ask questions, but really encourage you guys to open up, even if you feel you're a little lost in the process.
Coach Manning, anything you want to jump in and add here before we start?
No, I mean, I think it's important to not just ask questions in this meeting, but also kind of keep an open line of communication, especially with Chandler, as you begin this process if you're interested in playing in college, because there's a lot that can happen, and it can happen really quickly, or it can happen seemingly really slowly, and then happen all at once. So keeping an open mind and keeping an open line of communication with coaches is really important.
Yeah. So just like Coach said, the communication aspect of this is really key. We are here to be a tool for you. Club lacrosse is inherently kind of an expensive venture. And so we want to make sure that you get the best bang for your buck possible. So, please use us as a resource to be able to help you. It's recruiting something that's going to be driven by you and your family primarily. We can't be the ones playing on the field for you. We can't be the ones sending emails for you all the time or making the phone calls for you. But if there's a thing here and there that you want us to help with, we definitely can. And if we make a plan together, the way that I found things to work the best for recruitment is that if the families, the player, and the coaches can get together and actually talk and make a plan, it makes it a lot easier for us to be able to come up with a plan of action that's going to help you find the right school and the right fit. So what I just did is I went ahead and I put in the chat here a link to our recruiting timeline and our information for families that we've put together from our program. And I'm going to share my screen here, and I just want to go through this because I'm not sure if everyone has seen this before. And Coach, I'm going to have you give me permission to share my screen. Another challenge that we didn't run through before this.
I just started looking for how to do this. How about I just see more. Sorry, I'm a Google Meets guy, like I said.
It's all good. We are better at coaching on the field than we are with computers.
Yeah. Give the ball to Connor Cruz. Oh wait, sorry, we're not on the field. I don't see it, Chandler. I don't see it. I'm sorry.
All right.
What do you want me to share? Do you want me to share the recruiting?
Yeah. Why don't you go ahead and share that screen for us? You can just click share screen.
There we go. Let's see.
All right. So while you get that up, some of the stuff that I will go over here. I sent out in their email earlier on a link to a recruiting survey. That is one of the main tools that I like to use when we're talking with families about the best ways to pare down the type of schools that they're interested in. If you've looked at it already, you've probably gone through it. I highly suggest that every family sit down and do this, with the kid being the primary person that's filling it out and the family helping to answer questions. It has questions like, what size of school are you interested in? What type of school are you interested in? Do you want to be in a rural area? Do you want to be in a city? It has questions about the type of lacrosse that you're interested in playing. Do you want to play on a really serious team? Do you want to play on a not so serious team? Do you want to try and play Division I, Division II, Division III? What's kind of your goal? From there, we can start to work that. We can start to pare down the type of schools you're interested in. One of the things that comes up quite frequently is kids might say, hey, I want to be an engineering major. Well, engineering in school is a challenge to find sometimes. There's some creative ways that you can go about finding that, where maybe you do a 3-2 program where you do 3 years at one undergrad institution and then you do 2 years at a larger state school. There are some schools that specialize in engineering that you can do. These are types of conversations that we have pretty frequently with players. So I am now the host again, and I'm going to go ahead and share this page here. So can everybody see the screen that I'm sharing? Thumbs up, Manny. You can? All right, great. So I'm going to skip through freshman year. If you're a freshman and you're paying attention to this, awesome. This will help you in a few years. You don't really need to be worrying about what you're doing in terms of recruiting. No one's really paying attention to you. If you're a sophomore, the main thing for you is to continue to get as good as possible. After your sophomore year, going into your junior year, that year kind of matters for some of you. It is kind of like house money at that point. If you have phenomenal film of you playing lacrosse that you can share, if you go to a couple of showcases and you do great, there's a chance that you can end up at a Division I school come the fall. You might get some of that interest. With that said, there is a big asterisk on that, meaning that while it seems like on social media that everybody's committing in the fall of their junior year, that is not the majority of players who go on to play college lacrosse. So all the kids that we've had that play Division I or D2 or D3, outside of maybe 1 or 2, all of them have committed in the fall of their senior year or later. And we've had over 100 plus different kids play. It's almost 30 different kids who've gone to commit Division I at this point. Again, it really is more senior centric. So really the main thing that you need to do if you're an underclassman is continue to improve, make sure your grades are as good as possible, and go from there. So if we're talking about the junior year, I highly suggest that going into your junior year, after your junior year, that you find a couple showcases that you can go and play at. Understand that showcases and prospect days are a little bit different than actual team tournaments. If you are playing in some of these, you are probably going to be more self-focused than you are team-focused. It is great if you could be the player of those showcases who's showing off that they have a great IQ for the game, who's actually sharing the ball. That is something that colleges look for. However, recognize that these things are kind of more individualist, kind of showing off your skills as opposed to what you do as a team. At this point in your junior year, it's going to be important to start communicating with kids. So with coaches. So if you're a junior right now, it is really important that you start to put together some film that you can use as a tool to share with coaches. If you're a sophomore and you already have really good film, start to put that together, because that ends up being like a resume. College coaches are looking to see what you look like on film. They want to see certain traits. They want to see certain abilities. And they start to check certain boxes for what they want. If you can show your game on film, that is like your first resume, and it helps get your foot in the door with schools. At this point during your junior year, it's really important that we start having conversations between us, with your with your high school coaches, with us, reaching out to different college coaches who are there. We will help you in the communication process. So we highly suggest that you start to CC the colleges that you reach out to using the Hilltopper, CCing the Hilltopper email address. That way we can understand what type of communications you're having and help follow up when it's appropriate. So the majority of us are at this point right now, the summer before the senior year. All right. It's going to be helpful that at the end of your spring that you get your unofficial transcripts from your school. Coaches are going to want to know what your grades are like. It is awesome if you are a 6'5" freak athlete who can run the field, score every goal and, play great defense. But if you don't have the grades to get into their school, they're going to stop recruiting you at that point. So it's helpful to go ahead and say, hey, coach, I have the grades, and be able to prove it. If you have an HCT, SAT scores that are good that you want to share, it's helpful to include those as well. Coaches are going to want to know that you can get into school. The next thing is to make sure that we start emailing schools that are at your level, right? Not everybody's going to go to Duke. Not everyone's going to go to UNC. I know it's a dream school for a lot of students around here. Most of us in our program are not Duke or UNC level. So finding the schools that make the most sense to email with is really helpful. Again, try and find a couple showcases, prospect days. If you find that there's a school that you really, really like, maybe there's a school that's a little bit of a stretch for you. Try and go to those prospect days on their campus if you can. Say William Peace is a school that you're really interested in and Coach Crisco hasn't seen you yet. Going actually spending time on their campus gives you a little bit more individual attention where you know that they're really paying attention to you. So the other piece of this as well is when you're communicating with them, make sure that they know your schedule. If you have 2 showcases that you're going to and you have 4 tournaments with the Hilltoppers that you're going to be playing at, make sure that they know that. Most coaches and coaching staffs, they will be making a plan as a group about where they're recruiting, and they'll try and send as many coaches to as many different places as they can throughout the course of the summer. So if Coach Crisco has a assistant who's going to be going to one of our events, and you email the entire staff and say, hey, I'm going here, I'm interested in your school, Coach Crisco might say to that assistant, please make sure you go see this player. That's really how that system works. If they like your film, if they like your transcripts and they get you into school, it's, they'll circle you and say, hey, we got to make sure we can see this kid. So that is the main process for going into the recruiting cycle. If you are a really talented sophomore, mini rising junior, that process is what you should be following as well this summer. The next piece of this is going to be the actual senior year. And so this is really where the recruiting process heats up for the majority of players. This is a time in which you can really get on campus with schools. This is where coaches will be hosting you for visits. This is where you are actually going to be able to spend the night on a college campus. You are evaluating the school for yourself, and the school is also evaluating you throughout this process. So if you start to communicate with a college, Coach Crisco calls you up and says, hey, I'm really interested in you to come to William Peace. We'd like to have you come for an overnight visit. We'd like to have you see the school. You're going to be seeing the school. You're going to see the professors, meeting professors, and walking the campus, hanging out with the players on the team, might go to a practice, might spend the night. They're going to be evaluating you as a team to see if you're going to be a good fit, and you're going to be evaluating them as well. This is probably the best time for you to be able to figure out whether or not that school is somewhere you're going to want to go. You might have some schools that you would think, man, this school is not for me. I went through that process where the school that I ended up at was a school that actually my parents went to, and I thought, man, I'd hate that school. It would be terrible for me. And after I actually visited one time, I ended up realizing that'd be a great fit. So having an open mind and reaching out to colleges or following up with colleges that reach out to you is going to be really important. You may have some schools that will reach out throughout this process who you may not know much about, you may not be interested about, may not be interested in. If a college coach reaches out to you, the first answer should be, yes, I'm interested in learning more. And then eventually, if you decide, hey, I'm not interested in school, just say, hey, coach, I decided that I'm not actually interested. Those coaches will really appreciate that, as opposed to potentially ghosting them, not answering, which is something that we see that comes up pretty frequently. So that's our big background, quick overview about the process. I will stop sharing the screen now that you have that link. If anybody in the chat has questions that they'd like to go ahead and throw to us, we would love to start answering those. Coach Crisco, to put you on the spot, what did you think of our big overview? Is there anything that you
I mean, yeah,
thought
it's
you agree
pretty
with or
pretty on
disagree with?
point. It's stuff that we've talked about over the years. It's huge to have those transcripts ready to go. That's the first thing I ask for whenever anybody express interest. It's like, send me your transcripts. We'll set up a time to talk. In most schools like William Peace have maybe a admissions liaison to athletics. So we work directly with our admissions department. So those transcripts are extremely important. And then, we work with, there's different schools that have opportunities like test optional. You got to ask those questions. Hey, coach, I'm really proud of my test scores, but is there any way that we can maximize a scholarship opportunity if we go a test optional route? So those are the types of things you got to figure out in your process with the individual schools, because not all schools are test optional. The different types of schools, what I would say is get a variety. You may see yourself as a Division I guy, maybe a mid-tier Division I. However, there's Division III schools out there that offer different things that may have the ability to give you the experience and educational experience that you're looking for. So I would like to just emphasize, get a variety of different schools out there. Get a rural school, get wherever you think you want to go. Just make sure you're open-minded in your process, and visit different schools on unofficial visits, just to reassure yourself of that opinion you may have. So, because you never know. Chandler's experience was exactly that. He wasn't sure if he wanted to go, and he ended up going just because he fell in love with it, or vice versa, whatever you were expressing earlier on. But I can't tell you, Zach Berkowitz is a great example, great attackman for us. Called him up, dead set on Salisbury, had never heard of Guilford College, and came on down and absolutely loved it. The other thing I would say is the timeline. Yeah, have your ideal timeline ready to go, but don't be married to it. You got to be open to opportunities that come forward, because a lot of schools, they recruit a little bit later, or they're extremely done with their class. You have to have those individual conversations with each college coach to see what their timeline is and make sure that it matches up with yours, because everybody's different. Everybody's recruiting process is different, and it needs to be an enjoyable. It shouldn't stress you out. So it's nice that Chandler puts these together, these Q&As, so that you can understand that this is supposed to be an enjoyable process. It's like a job interview, but at the same time, this is probably the first time in some of these guys' lives that you're being reached out to come do something that you love. So it's a unique experience. You can't let it stress you out, and you got to be upfront and honest with yourself and with the coaches that are interested in you. So yeah, go ahead, add it on to that.
So we do have some questions starting to come in here. I do want to piggyback as those start to roll in, though, on one of the things you just said about there are different timelines for different programs and different schools.
Right.
The way that the majority of recruiting takes place for current juniors, Division I schools are doing the majority of their initial evaluation process. I would say they're trying to find about 50% of their class early on. Recruiting is changing with the changes of the transfer portal, and now that there's kids or schools that have a fifth-year option for kids, with the whole COVID dynamic that went on. So recruiting has been kind of pushed back a little bit for the high school player. There are situations for players where they might be picked up later in their senior years, just because kids are switching schools, and a college, a Division I school actually reached out recently and said, hey, our 2023 goalie has decommitted. We're looking for somebody now. Those type of scenarios tend to take place. After the Division Ones, then come the Division Twos. So some of the most elite Division Two schools, Division Two meaning that they also still offer scholarship money. They start to really, I'd say that the top 25 of those schools, they're starting now to really look at their 2024 class, although they're still trying to finish up their 2023s, their current seniors. The Division III level, outside of the most elite of the elite, all of their recruiting starts in the summer, or this coming summer for 2024s, and then it will go through next July. So the process is pretty continuous until the school starts in the fall for colleges. When we're talking about the different levels, Division I has full scholarship offers, meaning that they have 11 different full ride opportunities. Nobody is going to get a full ride opportunity to play lacrosse, meaning that no one player is going to get the entire amount paid for a school. The rest of that's going to come from your academic money, meaning schools will give you money based on how good your grades are, or different stipends that might be out there. Division II has the ability to have, I believe it's 8, am I correct, Coach? 8 spots. Division III has no athletic scholarship money. So the rest of that money comes from your academics and different scholarships that are out there. So we have some questions in here that we will go over. The first is, what are the do's and don'ts? I'm going to massage this question a bit. Coach, what are the do's and don'ts to highlight tapes? And also, I will go over after that the best ways to create film.
Yeah, you got to be careful with those music choices. I know everybody loves but I'm always a big fan of somebody just putting some classic rock on there and just letting it roll. It doesn't need to be a huge production. It needs to hit the points on showing what kind of player you are. If it's 10 minutes long, it's way too long. I'm saying anything between 3 to 5 minutes is perfectly fine. I'm probably going to watch about 2 minutes of it at a time, and then move on to the next one. And maybe if I really want to, I'll watch the rest of it a little later. But the half an hour long highlight films, probably not ideal. You can have multiple, but I would really emphasize, don't make them more than 3 to 5 minutes, because then you're wasting your time and the coaches. They can get a pretty good handle on what kind of player you are in that short amount of time, and evaluate whether they want to see you more live or spark up a conversation to see what kind of individual you are on top of what kind of player you are. But yeah, the massive productions, not necessary. And you can have fun with it with your friends, but when you're sending it off to college coaches, the simpler you make it, the better.
Yeah, and so on our end with Hilltoppers, we use Huddle, which is a film sharing service. The reason we use Huddle is it's the same software as many high school teams use. So if a player wants to make highlights out of their high school highlights and their club ball highlights, it's easier to do from there. We will take all of the film from the summertime, and we will put those into Huddle accounts for our, we will do it for all the tournaments for our 2025s and 2024s. We will do it for the majority of the tournaments for the 2026s. With that film being in Huddle, if a player goes through and will find the clips that they want to put together, I am willing, as your program director, to assemble the video for you, put music to it, and put it on our Hilltopper YouTube account. If you guys want to do it on your own, more power to you, totally fine. As long as you find the clips and say, hey, these are clips that I want to put together, I can put it together for you. I actually use iMovie. I'm a Mac guy. It's pretty simple to learn. Putting on YouTube's relatively easy as well. From there, it's just a process of making sure that you can share it with coaches. I would suggest that if and when you make your highlight tapes, you put your best clips forward. All right. Nobody wants to see you just pick up a ground ball and then make a pass as, you know, your first 3 clips. Show your best stuff, show a variety of what makes you great, and, you know, go from there. I would also suggest that you show it to a coach. If you're not going to, you know, have us assemble it for you, go ahead and show it to your coaches so that we can give you an idea of what are the best plays. We can kind of have an eye as a recruiter, as a coach, for what makes the most sense for you. So I hope that answers that question about recruiting videos. Another question is up here, Coach. I'll let you take this one. Do most D3 schools offer scholarships?
Most Division IIIs offer scholarships as far as academic, which would be a merit-based scholarship, and then need-based based on what your FAFSA would require. And then as far as athletic scholarship, Division III does not carry athletic scholarship.
Yeah, and there are some other types of grants, like some schools will have an in-state grant. Some schools will have a grant for, you know, students who play the drums. There are random things that are out there that you can apply for. That is a great conversation. If you are interested in trying to play Division III lacrosse, having those conversations with your coach is a great way to try and figure out ways to find more money to, you know, attend to school if you're worried about that. And that's relatively helpful.
Yeah. And I'll just add to that, there's outside scholarships everywhere that you can apply for. What I would really emphasize is those small ones that seem insignificant, that are a couple $100 there or here, that only require an essay. There's a lot of people that pass up on those, so you got a good chance at it. And anything helps if it stacks up over time.
All right, so another question for you, Coach, and I'll preface this with Division III coaches, Division II coaches, and Division I coaches are very similar. They all work the same events. They all go to the same tournaments and prospect days. And quite often, when a Division I school is having a prospect day on their campus, they are inviting the D2, D3 coaches to come and be a part of it. So just because somebody's a D2, D3 coach, they still know the people who are working at the very top of the sport. The question here is, do any of you notice specific personality traits or behaviors that are inherent to either Division I, D2, or D3 lacrosse players? And if so, what are they, and how can we best support our boys in learning these and showing these?
Yeah, and there's a few traits. I mean, Division I guys typically have the skill set of being good learners, you know, both auditory, visual, and kinetic. They're able to do something once or twice and kind of understand the way to apply it to the game. Visual learners, as in, you know, coach draws something up and they're able to retain it and go execute it. Is same thing with on film. They see something on film and they can apply that. You know, and then auditory is like they listen to instruction easily when coach is on the field in the moment. I would say if those are really what make elite Division I guys kind of stand out, is they have all 3 of those. Now, am I saying that all Division I guys have that? No, some guys are stronger in other areas, and that's another way that coaches kind of learn about their players, how to get the best out of them. They learn that they discover what kind of learners they are. So as far as personality traits, you know, they're all looking for good people. So the culture pieces to a lot is important. So as you get to learn more about a school and their program and their coach, those are important questions to ask. Like, ask about the team culture. You know, for instance, we're trying to build a team culture now. You know, and that part of it is bringing in the right type of player and the right type of student athlete. So again, it's specific to each program. But that's a conversation to have with those coaches. It's like, what kind of player are you looking to bring in? You know, are you looking for more cerebral individuals? Are you looking for guys that are able to bring the energy and have fun? And, you know, each team needs a different type of individual with a different type of energy. And at the end of the day, they're just looking for people who have good core values, come from a good family that can contribute positively to their program. So that is overall what they're looking for, to bring in, because each program ideally wants to be the family. You don't want to just bring in anybody into your family that could destroy it from the inside. You want to protect the family. So they'll circle the wagons pretty quickly if they don't feel like this person's going to contribute in a positive way. So doing all you can to be a good person, to contribute positively to a team culture.
Yeah, and I would also add, in terms of inherent behaviors, I think anybody who's playing college lacrosse is somebody who loves lacrosse. There's a lot of time spent in the course of the day that you're carving out to go play or train, and you've also got to be a hard worker. Time in the weight room, time spent working on your stick skills in the off season. Those are things that are really key to college lacrosse players, and I think that the kids who go on to play in college do love those things.
Yeah. The difference between being a guy who plays lacrosse and a guy who is a lacrosse player.
Exactly. Another question here: is there an advantage or disadvantage to doing a postgraduate year? I'll take that, and I'll let you jump in on this. We have had some players in our program go on to do PG years. Most of the times when a player has done a PG year, it's for one of two reasons. The first is for academics. They have a school that they are set on that they want to go to, and they need to use their grades for admissions. That is one reason why a player would do a PG year. The other reason is if a player is a late bloomer. So if somebody is going to be, maybe a player who could, get to the Division I level, maybe they have the skill, but they don't have the size. Maybe they play at a really small school that doesn't get much exposure. Maybe they started late in the process. Going to a postgraduate year allows them another summer to be evaluated. It allows them the chance to, be seen some more, and also lets them be seen at their peak ability level. There are some kids who go through puberty late, maybe won't grow as much until they are at 18 or 19 years old. That's why you see some kids who go to play Division III lacrosse end up transferring to Division I schools. They maybe weren't seen until late in their high school career when other schools were already full, and then after 2 years of college lacrosse, all of a sudden they are better than a bunch of Division I guys. That's something you see quite frequently. So the PG year is an opportunity. Keep in mind that is sometimes pretty expensive. Do you want to add anything to that, Coach?
Yeah, it only makes sense, whether you were a late bloomer. Academics is hands down the best reason to do a PG year, but it's all financially driven. It only makes sense if you have the means to do so, and then on top of the means, you need to have that return on investment. That's the only way a PG year really does make sense in the long run, is you have to be able to level it out, because it is an expensive avenue to go, but it can be very beneficial.
Yeah, it's a year of high school that is effectively the price of college. The transfer process. So this is definitely something that we're seeing more and more. Obviously, we want this is a recruiting talk, but it's really important for kids to figure out what the right school is for them in terms of a fit of the college, right? We are seeing that more and more kids are transferring from school to school. Sometimes that is a playing time thing. Sometimes it is hey, maybe I didn't get along with my coach in the way that I thought I would. There are different reasons for why kids would, transfer. It is really important, though, that, when you're going through this process, that you try and look at the school as a school that you would, trying to evaluate a school based on whether or not you'd be happy there with or without lacrosse. And I think that's a really crucial component to whether or not you decide if you want to transfer. I actually, when I was in college, I loved Guilford, but I was thinking maybe I want to go to a larger school, might consider transferring to UNC. I went through that entire, weighing out the pros and cons of it. If you are transferring for lacrosse, there is a process that is called the NCAA transfer portal. I'll let Coach kind of touch on this. But effectively, what takes place is you just inform the school that you want to enter the transfer portal. You put your information in, and from there, other schools are able to contact you. And then the recruiting process begins again if other schools want to reach out to you. Coach, do you want to discuss that at all, or?
Yeah, I mean, the transfer portal, there's so many, it's a wide array of guys. The spectrum for reasons for individuals wanting to transfer is pretty vast. Part of it is you don't go through the proper vetting of the program that you are joining up with. You either you listen to the rumor mill, or you don't go where is best for you. You make a decision based on maybe what your friends are thinking, or what have you, whatever reason it may be. It just wasn't the right fit. And sometimes guys get there and what they were expecting, it isn't the case. There are coaches out there that I would say are more on the recruiting end of things than, let's say the development. And that's part of going through your process. You need to have those conversations with coaches. Ask them, if I'm not getting the job done, am I going to have that time to develop, or are you bringing in somebody that's just going to, surpass me? You got to have those tough conversations that might be uncomfortable to realize where you are in that class going in. And then with the transfer portal, once your paperwork's in, like Coach said, you're going to go through the entire process again. What we're finding is more and more guys, especially through the COVID years, made decisions based on what they saw online, and everything online sounds great, right? Everybody believes everything on the internet, obviously, but really, it's just doing your due diligence in finding the place that's right for you. And some people take a shot and it didn't work out, and they just find the next one. So you don't want to see your name in the transfer portal too many times, but I understand some of the reasons. And some guys are in the transfer portal for graduate school, which makes sense because there's a lot of extra years out there right now.
So this flows pretty well into another question in here. How do you evaluate which school provides the best opportunity for actual time on the field versus getting an offer just to be on the team and only sit on the bench? That is a conversation that is great for you to have with the actual coaches. I think it's when you're doing the recruiting process, asking, how do you see me being used? Do you think I could play early? Do you think I'm going to be later in development? I also think that that's a great conversation to have with, your club coaches. I'm willing to be honest with you guys. If you ask me, what level I can possibly play at, we have this conversation all the time with different players. There are many different times where, one school will be recruiting a kid and as well as another school. And, I'll say, hey, at X school, you are going to be probably 2 or 3 years until you get on the field. And at Y school, you're going to probably get on pretty early. We have those conversations pretty frequently. We also have a pretty good understanding of the level of talent at each of those rosters, and can kind of help from that standpoint. So that's from a club perspective. Do you want to add anything from a college recruiter perspective, Coach?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, if you're interested in a school, you need to see them play. Like they should even have either visit a practice or visit during a game and see what kind of players they have, and then see if your level of play matches what's on the field, the product that's on the field. Because if you feel like, oh, I can do some of those things, but not all of them, maybe that you're in that developmental role, and then have those conversations with those coaches. Like, hey, I really like how number 10 plays. That's where I kind of see myself. Where do you see me, coach? And then if they say, oh, well, he's a very good player, this is kind of how we see you developing into this role. Then you have that clarity. You got to compare what they currently have. There's sometimes coaches will be like, yeah, we have some good players. We see you better than them at the end of your career. and we see you developing to move this program forward. So there's different opportunities with each team. But yeah, that evaluate where you are with what this team currently has, and then see how that coach sees you fitting in.
Yeah. Another couple of things I'd also say is if you're trying to evaluate your opportunity, looking online to see the size of the roster, you can see there's some that may have, only 14 kids. Coach Crisco is taking over at William Peace for the first time this year. He actually, so I don't think we said this at the top of the session here, but this is your first year. You just started mid-November, is that right?
I am 17 practices in with this current roster.
And how many kids do you have on the roster right now?
I have 24 kids on the roster.
Okay, so 24, that's probably on the low end of a collegiate roster. 14 is probably the smallest I've seen. Actually, I've seen 12 at one point.
Well, we had 14 in the fall.
Sure. We've seen as big as 60 for different rosters. There also are some schools that might have JV programs. So you can go online and you can look at that. The other thing about evaluating, and just a little asterisk to put next to this, I said earlier, it really does matter how hard you work and how much you love lacrosse. There will be kids who get recruited, and recruiting is a lot about seeing potential, because a lot of high school kids are not as good as college sophomores. Once you get to campus, what you actually do with your body and actually what you learn to do lacrosse wise, that's going to determine the amount you play. So coaches can say, hey, we see you in this role, but if you don't develop into it, or if somebody else develops into that first, you're probably end up sitting behind somebody. Question in here about club lacrosse. And I probably should have mentioned club lacrosse when I was talking about D1, D2, D3. That's another option. There's also NAIA lacrosse, which is sanctioned collegiate lacrosse. It's just not through the NCAA. So believe it or not, the NCAA is not the only governing body for lacrosse. Club lacrosse is just like D1, D2, D3, but at different levels of interest and commitment to the sport. So you can have some programs. I went to the University of South Carolina for grad school. They take it really seriously for their club program. I think they actually won the club national championships a couple years ago. You're paying a couple $1,000s a year to get all the gear. A small difference between college or NCAA lacrosse and club lacrosse is whether or not you're paying for it or not. They will do serious practices. They hire a coach. They have a full roster. Some of them may recruit. Then you have some programs that on the complete other side of the spectrum, they don't really care as much. They may or may not show up to practice. It may be more of a social gathering for them where they end up showing up and playing, just kind of like as a men's league thing that's like pick up at the YMCA. So you can evaluate different club teams. If you're interested in club lacrosse, I've actually had a conversation with a couple different players recently about trying to evaluate schools based on what would have a good club program for them. That was actually newer for me, trying to evaluate what would be a good club lacrosse fit. But I was able to reach out to some of our former players who are at different places and trying to see what makes, the most sense for different club programs. Some play at different levels. It just really depends. So club is just like, NCAA lacrosse. The only difference being that the majority of the time they're not recruiting. It's like, if you like ECU a lot and you really want to go to ECU, you can go to ECU and then join the lacrosse team. So that is how that works. So it is about 8:15. We started about 45 minutes ago. If there are any other questions, I'd like to get those in now. While we wait for any of those, Coach Manning, Coach Crisco, do you guys want to add anything else as we go here? Nothing else.
What's that? Sorry.
Sure, I'll say something. Just because, I mean, I know a lot of folks on this call, but I'm a high school teacher. I write a lot of college recommendations every year. I talk to a lot of kids who play sports or don't play sports about college. And I think that one of the biggest pitfalls that I see for high school boys playing lacrosse is that they don't actually evaluate where they would want to go to school, or they make a decision to go to a school based on what they think might be good for them. So it is kind of on both ends. Kids going to schools that are far away or don't fit them academically because the lacrosse coach called them. And it's the first time they've ever been called by a lacrosse coach. And so they commit right away and they end up in a situation they don't love. And on the other end, kids who don't get that call or don't get many calls or don't get calls from the schools that they're anticipating will call them. And they end up going to like a state school or a larger school and not playing lacrosse because the recruiting process didn't work out in the way they thought it would work out. And I think it's really important, if you want to play collegiate lacrosse at any level, to keep an open mind that there's a wide variety of schools that might work for you. And just because Duke doesn't call you in the first week of recruiting doesn't mean that the only option for you is UNC Wilmington. So I think it's a long process that takes kind of a lot of work if you want to land in the right spot. But I think folks here are fortunate to have high school coaches and club coaches that are really willing to help you through the process and make a good choice for yourself, whether you want to play lacrosse at a high level or whether you just want to get out on a field and play. So.
Yeah. And I'll also say, just talking about different pitfalls that we see, I think there's a fear of missing out that comes from kids and social media these days, where they see all these ideas and pictures about what college should be, and they see these massive state schools as like the end all be all experience. To plug William Peace for a second, William Peace is actually a small liberal arts school that's right next to NC State University. So there are many different schools that are like this out throughout the US that are in large metropolitan areas, and they're small schools that are right next to massive state schools. Believe it or not, college is a fun experience regardless of where you go. So you can go to a small school and still have a big school experience if you're in the right place. Also, if you go and join a college lacrosse team, you're probably going to have a really good time because you have 25 to 40 friends automatically baked in. You're going to be part of a group like that. And it really is a great experience playing college lacrosse. I wouldn't trade my experience for anything. It may not be, the right thing for you or your kid, but it's definitely something that's worth pursuing, especially if you're spending this much time throughout the course of the summer playing. I'd highly recommend just at least giving it a try. Believe it or not, if it doesn't work out, you don't like playing college lacrosse for the first year or two, you can always transfer and go somewhere else that you might enjoy. Or if you like small school and you really want a big school experience, many kids are going to be going to grad school, so you can go to a graduate school afterwards. As far as the process from here, depending on how old you are, if you are a current sophomore or current junior, and you're thinking, hey, I want to do college lacrosse, take that survey I sent you, fill it out, and then set up a time to have a conversation with me. We can do it over the phone. We can do it over Zoom. If you live close enough by, I'll drive to your house. If you don't live that close to me, then we can meet somewhere midway. But I'm willing to have these conversations with you guys and talk about coming up with a plan of what you're interested in, and we can go from there. John, I can resend it. I don't think I have it handy right here, but I will put it into another link and as a follow-up that I send out to everybody here soon. Cool. Any other questions, comments, concerns before we let you guys go? All right. Well, Coach Crisco, really appreciate you being here. Coach Manning, appreciate you as well. But the big college guy, appreciate you showing up. I hope everyone gives Coach and William Peace a serious look at some point, or not. Doesn't really matter. So, anyways, take care, guys. We will see you guys soon. Oh, all right. I'm gonna end this.